Hi YouTube, and welcome back to my channel. It's been a minute, hasn't it? I don't think I've done anything since December, and I knew I wasn't gonna hop into New Year's and stuff. I was pretty sure I wasn't, and so yeah, I think the last video I made was my 50th birthday, after my birthday countdown and everything, so it's been a while. So how have you been doing? I'm making this video today primarily because today is the 4th anniversary of my starting testosterone, so my transition. So I'm 4 years into transition now, and I'll post some photos of my transition here, in terms of where I started back in 2018. So the first photo is obviously, like, I think I was a week on testosterone at that point, so basically at the very start, where there hadn't been any changes whatsoever, and I was 20 pounds heavier at the time as well, so there's that. And then in 2019, I think you can start seeing that I had lost some weight. I dropped after, because 2019 is the year that I had all my surgeries. I had a hysterectomy and I had top surgery, and after the hysterectomy, I dropped like 20 pounds, like almost instantly, like within a matter of like 3 to 4 weeks after I was like 20 pounds lighter. It just came off, and then I've been stuck at that same weight since then. I've been trying all sorts of stuff. This is not my weight loss journey video or anything like that, but just, my body tends to not like to let go of weight. Something with, the hysterectomy and not having the estrogen production in my body anymore, dropped 20 pounds, and then my body was like, okay, we're good here. And I've been stuck there ever since. Anyhow, and so up until, obviously in 2020 and 2021, I've, just, continued my journey with testosterone and everything. After 2019, I was done with surgeries. I'm not doing anything else. And so basically what you see today is just me 4 years in. I with those photos of me over the last several years, I improved how I style my hair a little bit. I also started cutting my own hair during the pandemic, so this is actually my own cut. It's not the best cut in the world, but it's functional, and I like it, and it's easy to do. If you're curious as to how I cut my hair, I actually, believe it or not, so okay, me and my random thoughts. Oh yes, I have another announcement to make about that, but let me get this one random thought out first. So haircutting. So I'm a big fan of Supernatural, and during the pandemic, one of the actors who was a recurring character on Supernatural, Kim Rhodes, who played Sheriff Jody. Sheriff Jody. Anyway, she was wearing a very kind of short butch hairstyle at the time, and was like, hey guys, since we can't go to the salon right now, here's how I cut my hair. I've been doing it for 20 years myself, and here's how I'm currently cutting my hair. And so she showed this tutorial how she uses a trimmer to cut her hair, and I was going, I'd been going to the salon, and they were using a trimmer on my hair, and I was like, okay, I think I can figure this out. Because she was using a trimmer, and then she was also using scissors, and it was the scissors part that I was reluctant to do myself. But she kind of showed how to do it, and I was like, oh, that's actually easier than I thought it was. So I've been cutting my own hair ever since. I mean, the only time, and I'm still reluctant to go out in public very much anyway, but the only time, I've only been to the salon once since early 2020, and that's only because I went to a sci-fi conference and I wanted my back squared up, because that's one thing I don't do. I just kind of let it, you can't see it from here, but I just kind of let the natural hairline be what it is back there, and so that's how you can tell that I'm doing my own hair cutting, because it's not neatly squared off back there. Although I just did that last month, but it's grown back in since then. So, anyhow, oh yes, so okay, 4 years on T is the main thing about this video, but one of the other things I has come to light since my last video. So I have, and you, anyone who's followed my channel at all in the last 10 plus years knows that I tend to ramble and I go off on different tangents and everything. And this is just one of my many traits that made me suspicious that I might have autism. So, but I never wanted to really talk about it because I didn't want to just like be one of those self-diagnosed people. Now, no shame on anyone who self-diagnoses. That's, everyone's got their own personal journey to go with. For me personally, I did not want to self-diagnose and then just kind of tell the world and do that, because that's on me. It just was not something I was comfortable with. But I did finally find an assessment center locally that assesses autism in adults. They do autism, ADHD, etc. And since there's a lot of overlap between autism and ADHD and other things, I was like, it could be one, could be the other. I could just be weird. I don't know. So I was like, okay, let me go seek out a professional and see what their assessment is. And so I went through, and this was quite the deal. In order to make an appointment, I had to fill out this whole extensive survey and things. I think that basically the psychologist who runs the assessment center is like, okay, let's weed out anyone who really isn't autistic, and so there was a whole lot of upfront stuff even before I came in to meet with her and everything. And once they were like, okay, you meet the criteria for us to have an appointment. So, and then, but she was booked out for several months because there's very few assessment centers that work with adults. Most of them only work with children, and so diagnosing with anyone in adulthood, I know, is more difficult, especially if there's no family. I don't have any family that I was raised with that could be interviewed, so that makes things a lot more difficult. But I did have my roommate who lived here for 3 years, and he saw, my behaviors and stuff probably the most closely, since we were in the pandemic together, and even a couple years before that. So and he is also diagnosed as autistic. He was diagnosed as a preteen or a teen back when he was younger. So, and that's actually one of the things that got me thinking, is because we shared a lot of personality traits that were very similar. He's more extroverted than I am. I'm more on the introverted side of things, but there were enough things in common that made me like, let's go check this out. And so I have officially been diagnosed with autism level 1, because there's different levels in terms of how much support a person needs with autism, and I have the least amount of support needed. And I'm trying to be careful with my language here, because I know that there's ways of saying things that can imply that other people with autism are less than, and that's obviously that is not a good thing to do, because you know what, just because you need more support doesn't mean you're less than something. So anyway, so nowadays I think it's done by levels, and so I'm a level 1 autistic person. What was interesting is I was also diagnosed with alexithymia, I think is how it's pronounced, which is an inability to either recognize or express or be able to, like, if someone asks me how I'm doing, I'm like, I'm fine, whatever. I don't know how to elaborate on my own emotions, and most of the time, I'm pretty even keel, especially since I was on testosterone. Now, before testosterone, and just so just because I can't express my emotions doesn't mean I don't have them. It's not like I'm a Vulcan and I'm dead inside or whatever. And actually Vulcans have emotions too. Anyhow, so anyhow, it's not that I don't have emotions, because I do. Although before testosterone, my emotions were much more of a roller coaster and just all over the place and just bleh. With testosterone, it's much more even keel. I struggle with crying and stuff. That's all normal with testosterone. That is not an alexithymia thing. Um, those of us who are trans guys on testosterone, we just don't outwardly show emotion as much, and that might be a testosterone thing. Now, doesn't mean I can't cry, but it takes a lot more for me to get me to cry, where I used to cry at a drop of a hat back in the day, over stupid stuff and things, and nowadays I really kind of need something impactful to really tear at my heartstrings and stuff. A good friend of mine passed away several months ago, and that got me going. So, but with alexithymia, even if I'm experiencing emotion, I struggle. Like, if someone wants to talk to me about it and whatever, I struggle to explain it, to describe it. I know I'm having an emotion. I can't necessarily tell you which one. I can maybe tell you which family of emotions, I am angry, I am sad, I am, happy, excited, whatever. But to get into the more nuanced stuff, that's where I struggle with. I'm like, yeah, I'm good, I'm fine. That's me most of the time. Like, whatever. So it's an interesting thing. I'd never heard of it before. It's not a diagnosis that I've seen talked about much. And so getting that diagnosis on top of the autism was interesting. And alexithymia apparently presents primarily with people with autism, although apparently because it's a separate diagnosis, you can have it, I think, with ADHD and with other things. So it's not. I don't know if it's a standalone diagnosis that can exist without some other complementary diagnosis like autism. So I haven't gotten quite down to the deep rabbit hole of that yet. So anyhow, so that's that's a thing now. To probably the surprise of nobody, especially because that's actually an autistic trait is I'm having a thought, I'm talking about it, and then all of a sudden I'm having another thought that's related. In my mind, it's related to this thought, and I'm going off on this tangent and everything. And so, like, when I was talking about the haircuts and stuff, and I'm like, oh, here's a tangent, and see, I'm autistic. But I now I could actually say that I actually am autistic, and I have the documentation and the medical diagnosis to back it up. So I'm not just making a claim, because again, I have nothing against anyone who self-diagnoses, because getting a diagnosis, especially in adulthood, is so difficult. Because even if you can find a clinic that works with adults at all, insurance 9 times out of 10 doesn't cover it, or it's not part of the the deductible and stuff. You have to pay that first or whatnot, and even then, the out-of-pocket cost, even with insurance, is still really expensive. And I'm privileged enough to have the means and the resources to be able to pay for something like this, which a lot of people do not, especially in this day and age, especially in this economy, with rents being triple or quadruple of what they were 10 years ago. It's absolutely ridiculous. And so I just want to make it absolutely clear that I have zero, I do not shame a single person who ends up they watch all the videos and they do the online assessment tests themselves, and they're like, you know what, I'm autistic, and they self-diagnose. Because again, getting an official diagnosis is so hard. And but for me personally, it just, I needed that confirmation before I wanted to talk about it, because that's my personal thing. So just want to be absolutely clear about that, because it took me, because I've been thinking about it for a few years, and my roommate moving in is what really started getting the gears going. And even then, it took me a while to find somebody that would work with an adult, especially, I'm 50. I have almost zero family. I have my mother's brother, my uncle, but I only saw him 2 or 3 times a year as a kid, and he is not the most observant person in the world. Because I keep telling him about this stuff of my childhood, and he was like, that happened? Really? Huh? You were like that? Really? It's like, yeah, you were not paying attention. He was not paying attention whatsoever. I mean, he was not very observant. Still isn't to this day. There's things about, like, the last time I visited him over Christmas in 2018 that I tell him about, and he was like, that happened? And I was like, yes. I mean, he's getting older and his memory's going as well, but yeah, he's just never been a very observant person, and that's just who he is. And then I've got 3 half sisters, and I was not raised with them. I did not meet them until I was like 26 or 27 when I met them, so they didn't know me in childhood at all. Neither did my stepmother and things. And so all the people that I was around as a child, so my maternal grandparents, my mom, and then of course the people in the neighborhood that I grew up with, all of those people, well, they're either long deceased, or some of the kids I grew up with and stuff. I mean, a lot of them I've lost touch with, and the few that I'm still in touch with that I knew in elementary school don't remember a lot about what happened either. I have a much sharper memory. And that may actually be part of my autism, is because I just fixate on things so much that I remember things more. Especially my bullying, because I've run into some of my former bullies on social media, and I was like, hey, do you remember doing this awful thing to me? And they were like, I never did. They have zero memory. Either they have completely repressed these memories, or they just don't remember it, or they're lying. One of pick from one of those categories. To be perfectly honest, I mean, there are a number of them where I honestly believe that they really don't remember. It's clear they don't remember much of their childhood, especially being mean to people like me. Although, me being trans was, I know, one reason that I was a weird child. And I didn't act, I didn't do girl very well as a child, and so that was definitely one reason I got picked on. But having the autism diagnosis on top of that, I was just a weird child, period. It wasn't just the gender thing and the fact that I wasn't acting my gender very well. It was also the fact that I was just a weird child, and too hyperfixated on things, too much. I daydreamed a lot as a kid, struggled with focus and things, and you'd think that there was, like an ADHD thing, but that's where the autism and the ADHD thing can sometimes overlap. That's one of those overlap things, so it was more of an autism trait for me rather than an ADHD trait. But anyway, this is once again a long video, but I'm for all of my loyal viewers, you know me. I talk a lot. But anyway, I am still around. I'm still alive. I'm still doing great. In general, I'm still working on my next book. I published. Oh, that's right. I published. Since my last video, I published two more books. One more book. because it was October 31st when I published Transcendent, which is my little transgender novella. And then, oh yeah, on my birthday, I published my short story collection, which I'm pretty sure I talked about. And then on February, on Valentine's Day, I published Suddenly Omega, which was my most recent novel. So there's that. It's an Omega-verse romance. And I'm now back to, I don't know if any of you remember me talking about this science fiction book that I was writing way back in the day. I started it in 2015, and I was trying to get it published, and I couldn't get it published, and I kind of shelved the thing. And I dusted it off in 2020 to rewrite it, and I got about halfway through it, and then the whole thing with Kindle Vella happened in 2021, and so I put it aside again and published and wrote a couple of stories. So Transcendent and Suddenly Omega were both Kindle Vella stories that I then published as books later on. And now that those are out there, I'm now dusting off the sci-fi again, and I've been editing the rewrite to kind of refresh my memory in terms of where I'm at with the story, and I got to finish the rewrite, and then hopefully that one I'm going to put that one up on Kindle Vella first. I'm going to be posting 2 episodes or 2 chapters a week of that. It's a long enough story. It's going to take a good 8 or so months is my best guess right now in terms of how many chapters there's going to be to post the full story. So for anyone who really wants to get into the story, it'll be on Kindle Vella first, and then it will be published through Amazon KDP, and I'm thinking about actually getting an Ingram Spark account and publishing paperback and hardback through them as well. So stay tuned. It's going to be a while unless you want to get into Kindle Vella, and I might try and release some of the stuff early on Patreon. I do have a Patreon, but it's been kind of dormant because I haven't been able to get anyone to get into it. But if you are at all interested in my sci-fi story, leave me a comment below. I can do another video to kind of talk about it in a little bit more detail, and I could release, before I put it on Vella, I could release some things on Patreon ahead of time, early access, if anyone wants to support me. If that would be at all interest to anyone, if you're still watching this video, leave a comment below. I would love to hear from you. Or if you have questions about my autism, if you have questions about my transition, any of that, leave comments below, and we'll go from there. And hopefully I'll make another video soon-ish, before the end of the year. How's that? All right. Thank you for watching. Take care. Bye.